Our 2025 grief seminar with Bill Bryant. Bill's sent a biography over, and I'm going to read that real quick here for those of you that don't know Bill. Bill Bryant has been a full-time gospel preacher for the past 40 years, the last 25 years for the Wooddale Church of Christ in Knoxville, Tennessee. He received his formal education from the East Tennessee School of Preaching and Missions, which is presently the Southeast Institute of Biblical Studies, and the University of Tennessee and the University of Cincinnati. Bill was married 3 years ago to Rita French of Knoxville. He has 2 daughters, Rebecca and Rachel, and 3 grandchildren. Bill has also served 10 years in the United States Navy as a submarine nuclear operator and an electrician. That's one thing that Bill and I share in common. And along with his work as a full-time minister at the Wooddale Church of Christ, Bill is presently serving as an adjunct faculty for the Southeast Institute of Biblical Studies. He has taught evangelism class at the school for the last 18 years and has conducted gospel meetings, evangelism workshops, and Christian camps and other youth events in 20 states. And with that, I think we're handing out some literature. We've got some more to hand out later. We'll have 4 sessions today. There will be a question and answer session at the end of each. And we also have a fellowship lunch. Encourage everybody to stay for that. And with that, I'll turn it over to Brother Bill.
Thank you so very much for being here. Know some of you already. Anybody know Norm Goucher? I think he's visitor Weston. Raise your hand, Norm. She still prays for you. If it wasn't for Norm, I would have never met Rita. So every time I see Norm, I know she gets sympathy cards. I get other cards. We've been married. She's a farm girl from Middle Tennessee, but after my wife died in 2004, it was a long, long time before the Lord sent me somebody that was big enough and fast enough to catch me and to help finish the training process. So I appreciate her very much. Appreciate you. I think the world of your preacher. I knew him from Western New York. You know, at the time when I was teaching evangelism, we were doing door-knocking campaigns, and probably the most successful, most organized campaigns was in New York, Jamestown, New York, if I remember the name correctly. And so I got to meet your preacher and his family, and another one of his brothers, of course, came to school. So I think the world of Jesse. I didn't know he'd been out of school 15 years. Yeah. Got all these kids and put on a little bit of weight.
Still looks 25, right?
Yeah, close to it. But these books are helpful. Anybody familiar with this book? This book kind of helped save my life. Why am I here during the grief seminar? Well, because I know grief. You know, I began preaching years ago. I had done a number of funerals over the years. I got out of the Navy on 9/11/85 to begin preaching. I'd already started. I went to the school of preaching at Carnes when the first students, they started the school in the spring of 71. I started that fall, went through school. I didn't last 8 months. I prayed for the Lord to, make my heart stronger. I didn't know he was going to do it the way that he did. I finally woke up years later in the Navy, spent 10 years in, and then one of the things that happened along the way, I broke my dad's heart because, for years he was outside the church, but came back and was you couldn't imagine a father that was more supportive of my preaching and proud. But when I quit preaching, he was so mad at me. I was named after here, William or Bill, but I became Jonah. When my dad found out that I joined the Navy and they're going to be in the submarines, I guess it was kind of prophetic. He hoped that maybe one day that submarine would spit me out on dry land and start preaching, and that's exactly what happened. So in January of '82, went to Cincinnati after 5 years at sea and began working with a congregation about 140 and filling in. They hired a preacher that split the church wide open after about 8 months, and they asked me to fill in. So I started filling in the last year and a half up there, and then went to Newport News, Virginia, and came back to be a gospel preacher. And so I got my name back, and thankful for that. But I'd preached quite a few years. When I was up in Cincinnati, there was a guy named Paul Young that was probably one of the most successful funeral home outfits out there. He was an older man who was a sculptor. He was extremely well educated, traveled all over the world. But I got to do a few sermons and funerals up there. Didn't know what I was doing. He realized that, but he realized my heart was in the right place. He said, "Preacher, I want to make a deal with you. I know you're young, getting started, but I'll teach you what you need to know about the dying business if I can put you on call." Because there are a lot of people around here in Cincinnati who don't have churches, membership, and when a family member dies, they want a preacher. And I'll work with you and give you some things, some knowledge that'll help you preach. And then if I can put you on call, and I probably did 24 funerals over the course of the next 2 years until I came home. And I thought I'd learned a lot about grief. And learned enough about doing funerals where I became the funeral preacher for certain families. I've buried probably 3 or 4 families, the same family up in Cincinnati, and got that reputation. When I was at South Haven, did quite a few. There's one time when I first came back, I did like 10 funerals in 11 weeks. Only half of them at Alt Road Wooddale, but the others that I'd known from different places. And then my mother died. When I came back home, I got home December 19th, 1999, and 13 months later, my mother died of a massive stroke. I came to Knoxville because I knew she was in trouble. And the next year, my father died. The next year, my wife died. So, wow. I thought I knew what grief was. I had no idea. And I made a lot of mistakes about what to do and what not to do. And so part of the things I will share with you are things I've learned. We have an older crowd. That's a compliment, by the way, in these days. So anybody here not experienced hard grief? Well, so you all have a lot to say, and we want to give you the opportunity at some of these question-answer periods. It's not just to ask questions, but if you've got something that you know has helped you along the way, chances are it'll help somebody else. So I like classes where there's a lot of discussion, so I think they want me to speak first and lecture, and then we'll do that. So after about 30 minutes, we'll go ahead and open it up to you. And I think we're kind of on a loose schedule, but what we're trying to do today is help educate you more so. If you're going through grief, which some of you are, then I hope the lessons will help you, at least ways to approach grief in a skilled way, and then be able to help others. I admire this congregation for having the willingness to have a grief seminar. That's not probably the most popular seminars to have. If you had a marriage seminar, it might be different. Anybody old enough to remember Burkeen and Faulkner? They used to do marriage seminars. And when I was up in Cincinnati, we invited them to do a seminar. And we had to wait 2 years and finally got them. And our building was about this size. We were hoping to put about 140 people in it. There were 380 people signed up. We had to rent an auditorium of a junior college to get them all. So you know what that showed? People wanted to help their marriage, and so it was very popular. Grief seminars are not, but are they sorely needed? The answer is yes. What normally happens when someone, especially a part of a congregation, they die, the news, whether it's a lingering death or sudden abrupt death, death is still hard for everybody. What normally happens, I know in times past, it used to be pretty much everybody had the funeral, the embalming, all that, but now so many people are cremated. It kind of sets the timetable a little bit differently. But what used to happen before with, 2 or 3 days, the funeral was over, the burial took place, and then the support ended. You know why it ends? People don't know what to say. Don't know what to say. And so, anybody know what the first rule of medicine is? Do no harm. And that's the mindset many of us take in the church, especially when it comes to evangelism or things like that. Well, I don't know what to say, so I don't want to say the wrong thing, so I'll just stay home. And people that need the support so very much don't get the support. And so there's something, a principle I teach at the school, you only do as well as you are taught. And so I'm glad this congregation is different, setting a good example for others. I know a few congregations in the area have started that. Carnes has a grief ministry, and I think West End has that. But you're one of the smaller congregations, the first one I've seen at this size, willing to take on this endeavor. And I commend you for that. I'm going to start a verse. So you help me finish it. Rejoice with those who, and weep with those who weep. So today we're going to look at several different things as we carry that out. The first lesson has to do with just the nature of grief and the stages of grief. And I thought I knew a little bit about that, but after the fact, I learned a lot of things about what to do and what not to do. And then some coping mechanisms or coping skills you can develop. The third one has to do with really the last two, I think will be applied to most of you here. What can the church do? What can you do to help someone who's going through the grieving process? And number four, what's this got to do with your faith in God? I read the other day, it's something I'm sure most of you probably agree with. Are there questions you like to ask the Lord? When you get there, here's one on everybody's list. Why so much pain? Why so much heartbreak? Why so much suffering? Because, why would a righteous, loving God allow all the nonsense that happens on this earth? We're going to be talking about that on the last, the fourth one. So if you miss any of the rest of them, come back for the fourth one, because I think we try to look at the big picture and put that all together. But the first one has to do with the nature of grief. And so if you get your hand out, we'll go ahead. I'll make some comments. I won't read every one of them. I don't like things to be read to me as much. But first of all, just to make sure everybody now has a copy of this book. After my wife died, when the numbness left after 2 or 3 months, I could start reading. And I thought, well, since I've got a big library. Those of you who know me know I love books. I'd go get these big, thick books on grief. And you can get a lot of them. You know how much of that I could stomach? Very little. Even reading the Bible, you can't just read long chapters at a time. I could only take a few pieces. And I didn't have any book like that. And somebody recommended this book to me. This guy his name is H. Norman Wright. He's been a pretty prolific author of a lot of books, but he lost his son. And after that, he was asked to write together a book. And this book, copies of this book, I've probably given to 75 people over the last 15, 20. This book helped me. And the reason why it's helpful, there's only 85 pages in it and 25 chapters. Do the math. How many pages per chapter, those of you that are math scholars? 3 or 4 pages? I could handle 3 or 4 pages at a time. I could stomach that. And so that's the reason why this book is helpful. It gives pretty much the whole gauntlet of all the different stages of grief and some things that you can do and some questions that people have. And just going through all of that. I mean, the guy's a good writer, but there are experiences, there are illustrations that he uses that you'll remember for a long time that'll be helpful. So I'm not going to give you what I would. If I didn't have this book, I'd probably give you about 25 pages of notes, so you're spared. You're spared of that, but look at this book. If you want to be of service to others and want to know what to say and when to say it and how to say it, this book will be helpful to you. Got a lot of Bible passages in there. So I don't see anything, that's doctrinally wrong in this book at all, but there's a lot of practical knowledge. And so if you're willing to study it on your own, and then for your own sake, because in hindsight, we can learn a lot of things. After we go through something, well, I wish I'd done this. He gives you insights and the wisdom as to what to do to help somebody else. How many here have lost someone in the last 4 or 5 years? See, there are several, so you're going through that. Do you still need help? Yes, you do. And so if you don't know what you're doing, just because, that's the bad thing about sometimes parents. My dad was skilled in a lot of things, but there are some things he wasn't skilled in. But he would try to act like an authority. I didn't want to hear that. But reading this book and praying and working through scriptures and making this something that you want to do, that the Lord wants you to do, you'll be able to help a lot of people. And then maybe like you can go, these books are $4 a piece at the bookstore down on Parkside. In fact, I got 50 of them for $3 a piece. They're worth their weight in gold. So if I died of a heart attack in the next 5 minutes, you got something that you can take. And this seminar is a success because I put this book in your hands, but it will only be of help when you do what? When you use it, read it. So take the time. It just, like I said, if there are only 3 or 4 chapters, some chapters only 2 pages, some 4, just take the time to maybe 1 or 2 chapters a week. You don't have to do it real quick unless you want to, but read it and go back and read it again, and then learn it well enough to where you can tell people things out of this book on your own. Now, let's put in your own words. There are illustrations that you remember for a long time. Being a Navy man, you think I like the ocean? Like the water, like the waves? We haven't been to a beach in how long? 3 weeks. We take a little break and went down and said, how many times a year do we go to the beach? Normally once or twice. They can't get the Navy out. You take the man away from the ocean, you can take the ocean out of the guy. But, and I used to always get in the water. Anybody know what body surfing is? I could do that a little bit, never courageous enough or, want to buy a real surfboard and all that. But I see sometimes people try to go out there. I don't care how big or how strong you are. If the waves are high, what will a wave do to you? You stand there. Here it comes. Who's going to win? You're the wave. The wave's going to win. Why? It's big. It's powerful. Got all this energy there in the water. But if you want to take advantage of a wave, do what? Turn around and let it do what? Take it ashore. Here's the application. Tears. Emotional outburst that you try to stop. Don't try to stop it. Don't try to stop it. I'm going to give you a heads up in lesson number 2. Things that you can do. And one of the things that preachers try to, I know Jesse tries to do that. If you're going to give someone an outline they can remember for a long time, is that a successful sermon? I mean, sometimes I can't remember what I preached last week, so it didn't even work for me. But I'm going to give you 3 T's. I'm going to give them to you now. We can see it as we go through. That will help you as far as what it takes to go. Now I've got this in my notes. You don't have to write it down. But there are 3 T's that will help you. Here's the first one. Time. Time will help you if you're doing the right thing. Tears and talk. There's the 3 steps. If you become an expert in helping someone understand, I don't care if you did everything right. If you lost a loved one, how long does it take to go through the grieving process? A long time. Why is that? Well, we're going to be talking about that this hour and also the next hour. So time, God made us in such a way that time helps smooth things out, but you still have to do the work and deal with grief head on. Why the tears? When the words don't come, let the tears flow. And so that illustration I remember right out of the book. And so when those tears, being a man who grew up with the mindset, how tough were men back in the Depression days? Men didn't cry. They didn't tell you I love you. That's what women did. We're too big to cry. That's not good when it comes to grief. Or the tears. God made tears to help you. So time, tears, and talk. Time, tears, and talk. So hopefully you can remember that. We're going to emphasize those in the second lesson. Then the third one, what the church needs to be doing to help each other. In the fourth lesson, stepping back and looking at the big picture. What are we here on earth for? What is it we're supposed to be learning? How does suffering enter into the human equation to help our faith? And as you'll see here in a few minutes, what you go through and how you deal with the activities of grieving, they'll either be stepping stones to success or stumbling blocks. You may know someone who lost their faith because of a death or backed off, sure. If you handle grief correctly, you'll be a better person. If you don't, you'll be bitter. You may know any bitter people because someone died and never got over it. And so these lessons today are helping because everybody here's been through that. But maybe be able to put some words in your mouth, some concepts in your mind that will help you for a long time in a practical way. And there's some things we'll emphasize that hope will be helpful. So that's the introduction. Let's look at the handout. I'm going to read probably some of these statements and then make comments on that. So the statements will help you. If you hear me say it and read it with your own eyes, maybe that'll help make the imprint a little bit more lasting. Look at the first line. Grief is the experience of coping with loss. Grief is not limited to the death of a loved one. Sometimes we think it's only about death. It goes far beyond that. Any loss can help. Anybody here know somebody who might have had a horrible divorce, adultery 20 years ago? Still paying the price for that? Fighting over kids? I mean, I've seen people devastated by a lot of things. I've known people who lost their career. Maybe they're a musician and something happened to their arm. They had to totally do something else. Anytime you lose something, it hurts. How about the loss of a marriage? How about being someone raised up with or married an alcoholic, but for the children's sake, you stayed with them for 25 years? You think that life is hard? Even though the person's still alive, what have you lost? Lost the concept of what a marriage is supposed to be. You don't have the love and support of what God designed marriage to be. Does that hurt? Sure it does. And so we want to look at the process of grief, the different stages of grief. Even though the lady that we mentioned near the bottom of the page wrote this book that dealt with dying, still yet a lot of these different stages, apply to other ways of losing people. How about knowing that you're going to die? Can you grieve your own death? Sure you can. So understand expand your definition of what grief is. It's dealing with loss. So some of the principles that you'll learn and the approaches that you'll use and the help that you can learn to give people can still be applied to other people. How much you think of the suffering that goes on in this world is suffering that related to loss? Add it up. There's a lot of it, is it not? And so I want you to understand the principle we talk about today is not just limited to someone dying. The principles that we talk about today and from this book and from the Bible can be helpful with anybody who is hurting. Started long before Jess ever got to school, but there was a guy by the name of Flavel Yeakley. He was a professor at Harding College years ago. He wrote a book called Why Churches Grow. He did a lot of research for the book. He sent out questionnaires to hundreds of congregations, some who were growing, some who were stagnant, some who were dying. And those who were growing, he tried to find a common bond as to why they were growing. You know what it was? The church's commitment: find a hurt and heal it. That's what the church is supposed to be doing. If the church, now we're more than a worshiping society, we come together to get fixed and turn around and do what? So if people hurt and you know what to do with that, and you can answer, especially people on the outside, how valuable would you be? How valuable would the church be if you had a church full of people who knew how to respond to people who are hurting? Well, that's what God's design has always been. So understand, first of all, when you're talking about grief, it's not just about losing a loved one. And we talked about that in number A. Number B, grief is a journey that's imposed upon us. We don't want it. We don't want it at all. You can fight it, struggle through it, or embrace it. By dealing with it, I call head on. Anybody here grow up with a fear of dogs? I had her sister's face was torn apart by a dog. She still was till she died last year. They're always afraid of dogs. My dad taught me two things about dogs. And for a while, when I came back to Knoxville, I had to do all kinds of jobs. I worked for a mail. I delivered mail for about 6 months. And there were a lot of dogs. You know what they found out about me? Dogs would never bite me. I could deliver mail to houses that had dogs that tear up everybody else, but I get along with dogs. You know the two rules I remember about dogs? Don't run from them. Because number one, why do they run after you? Man, that's like that's fun. And turn around and do what? Look at them head on. Face it head on. I read the true story of a lady out with a kid out in the mountains out west, and a mountain lion came up. She had her kid started running, then she remembered, turn around and face it. She just stopped there and looked at that mountain lion face to face. You know what it did? It walked off. That's what you got to do with grief. You can try to ignore it and run from it. It's still going to fester. It's still going to hurt. You have to deal with it head on. It's a struggle, number C, because no one has been taught how to proceed through grief. Anybody here ever take English in school? Probably took it every year. It was your favorite course, right? Anybody here have to do math? Anybody ever take a course, go to public school, any courses on grieving? Anybody know of any place, any public school that offers a degree in grieving? What are you going to learn from that? Nobody gets any training on that. So the most devastating thing that can happen to you in life, how much preparation have we made? None. So is it a reason why we struggle with that? There's been no training in that. And I commend the congregation here, the elders make the decision to have this seminar to be trained up, to know what to do and know what to say, not only for your own sake, the sake of your family members that you love in the church here, the people out there in the world. So understand how important number C is. Grief is not something that can be fixed. In the same way, you have a heart attack, you're talking to Norm, his wife's in the hospital with AFib. Is there such a thing as a grief bypass? Would it be nice if you could have a grief bypass to take that broken heart and fix it? You don't get there from here. If you got cancer, what can they do? Cut it out? If you break your leg, we can fix you. There's no quick fix for grief. That's not the way it works. Your body, your mind, your heart has not been made the same way. Number D, grief can affect every aspect of your being. Your mind, your body, and your spirit. How does it affect your mind? Anybody remember? Any of you that have any memory issues and get distracted going through grief? I mean, just getting through the day can be what? A struggle. I mean, sometimes when we go to not too long, I went to the refrigerator looking for a hammer. Well, what was I doing? I was distracted. But if you think a normal day's distraction is something, then what happens when you go through grief? It affects every aspect of your body. Will it affect your sleep? You better believe it. Will it affect your dreams? Can it affect your health? Sure it can. My wife died on October 12, 2004. The next June, I was still struggling with it. I'll explain why in the second hour. But I was still struggling with it. And I started having these nightmares because my wife died of cancer. She had leukemia. We're at Vanderbilt Hospital for 6 months. She got the transplant. It didn't work. It failed. And then they finally, through some, as they would call them, a miraculous thing, she was cured on a Thursday afternoon in late September. She was told she could go home. The next day, we were going to load up the van and move back home to Knoxville. She developed a diarrhea and a slight fever. We argued over whether or not she should go back to the hospital, and she went back in there at my encouragement for just to make sure that they put her in a hospital. She developed a lung infection and died within 10 days after all that stuff. You think that was tough? Sure it was tough. I mean, you see, these things happen, things you don't plan for. And so 9 months later, I was still struggling. Now we had an apartment there on the Vanderbilt campus, and I would leave at 10 o'clock at night and run over and take a shower and get back by 11. If it was 10 after 11, I wasn't back, you know what would happen? I had a cell phone, it started ringing, "Where are you? Where are you?" 10 minutes late, because she wanted me there with her. And I started having this nightmare. "Where are you? I'm hurting, where are you?" She'd been dead for 7 or 8 months. It got so bad. I mean, one time I kept a log. There were 7 nights. 5 of those nights, I didn't get over 45 minutes sleep. I almost went crazy. I went to Dr. Smoke. You might know who Dr. Smoke is. He's a good guy, my doctor for years. He loaded me up all kinds of medicine. I was a zombie for a while. But then I had a drink that took care of that. But I'm just saying, my body was about to explode. Grief does horrible things to your mind, your body, your spirit. I'd been preaching for a while. It was never my intention. As I drove back on that Monday, October 12th, I made my mind, there's no way I'm going to preach anymore. I gave it up. But fortunately, people at Wooddale, at the time Alt Road, convinced me not to quit. So when I say body, spirit, mind, that's what anybody familiar with things like that? It tears you up as much as anything can, especially when it's the death of a loved one or divorce or whatever. So grief is something to be handled. Number 2, look at the handout. Grief will change the way you look at the Lord God and change the way you look at yourself. As I mentioned, going through this grieving process, your faith will be made stronger or weaker based on what? On what you do in the process. If you approach it in a healthy way, you'll become bitter or better. Now, some of these Bible passages, well, I'm just going to briefly mention, but we're going to spend most of our time looking at on the last lesson. What's this got to do with us? Anybody know what Job said in 42 verse 5? Remember Job's problem? He did well for a while, but after a while, what was he asking? When he started having all these calamities, what did his friends say? Job fessed up. You must have been doing something pretty rotten to get all this kind of stuff. Was that the answer? After a while, remember the attitude? Remember what he wanted? It shows up near the end of that book. He basically says, "Lord, we need to talk." So see, that's the way people are. They expect and know that things are going to happen for a while, but when it goes far beyond what you expect to happen, then what do you start doing with God? You start questioning God. And anybody know what God did? He gave him 2 long exams. The first of which, where were you when I laid the foundation of the world? In other words, explain all that, Job. And he couldn't. Job wanted an answer. Did God give him one? No, he did not. In Job 42, you get what he learned from that. It's a great chapter to study on your own. And he said in verse 5, I've heard of you with my ears, but now I see you. What do you think he meant by that? Now I see you. What did he learn? Did his faith grow through all that? Yes, it did. And I'm glad mine did. After all that, after losing a mom, a dad, and a wife, one right after the other. Because, when you think about the time of things, it normally takes, some people say, about 2 years to, they died all three in 3.5 years. And so I wasn't able to deal with my mom's death until my dad, he had Alzheimer's. And I had to take care of him, going through that. My first wife before she ever got leukemia, she got breast cancer, had to deal with all that. Then while he was going through all that, then Nancy got sick, and then she would go to Vanderbilt. I mean, bam, bam, bam. I didn't even want to open a Bible for a while. But somebody said, well, you can start reading the book of Psalms and so forth, and so I did. But after it's all over with, I became a better preacher. You know the first thing I learned? I learned how to pray. I learned how to pray. I thought I knew about prayer, had taught wonderful lessons on prayer. My prayer life changed. I wore out the Psalms. Anybody know why? You can ask. You can talk loud enough. I think. Well, what do you think the Psalms helped me? Have anybody ever studied the Psalms? How much of the Psalms is somebody grieving? The trouble they're in, what they've lost, what David sinned in. I mean, half the Psalms about, Lord, why is all this stuff going on? Why is all this happening to me? And so you get to see the bad thoughts. But then the Psalms also can inspire you. What are they? What do you think the good comes out of studying the Psalms? And if you're going through a grieving process, I'd recommend you do that. What do you think the Psalms can do to help you in your faith?
Realign your focus on what's the big picture.
Yeah. Who is God? Is he an awesome God? Here's what the book of Psalms contains that I need. I already had bad thoughts question. I got to see other people express great thoughts of a great God, even while they were hurting. Let me give you an example, Psalm 63. Psalm 63, open your Bibles. If you don't, you can find it on your phone, or I'll read it. Psalm 63. Here's David on the run from King Saul. He's running for his life. But in the middle of it, what was he still doing? Psalm 63. Look what he said. It's great. Talk about inspiring. O God, verse 1, you are my God. Early will I seek you. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh longs for you in a dry, thirsty land where there is no water. So I've looked for you in the sanctuary to see your power and your glory. Here it is. Look at verse 3. Because your loving kindness is better than life, my lips will do what? Praise you. Well, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? If I would encapsulate just one phrase, what I learned going through grief, here it is. Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. I learned more about the love of God after and going through grief than anything that ever happened to me in my life. Is that by the God's design? Yes. So if you go through what good, healthy skills will help you learn, then it's going to be important. Eventually, the mature Christian, look at point number C under 2. I really don't need the answer in order to go on. What's your faith now done? What is faith? We walk by faith and not by what? See, we want to see the answers to everything. That's not what faith does. Faith says what? If God says do this, I'm going to do this. If God wants me to be this person, that's what I'm going to be. I trust him. If his word says it, that settles it with me. I'll go on and trust my life in him. That's what the heartbreaks of life can help you learn if you go through it right. That's why God allows all that. Number 3, quickly, and then we'll allow question time. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross described the 5 stages of grief in her book on death and dying. It was published in 1969. It's still the most well-known resource for understanding grief. Now, some people look at it as 7 stages, but I didn't really understand these stages when I was going through my time of grief. There's denial. You act as if it didn't happen. There are very few people say, she didn't die. I mean, reality, she did die. But you act as if it didn't. If you want to see what it's like, anybody old enough to have heard the 1950 song, The Great Pretender? It's about, romance is gone. That applies to what I did. I act like everything was fine. I put myself into the work, wore myself out in other people, and all road in Wooddale, trying to help the church grow. Because I didn't want to think about it. You think that was healthy? No. So denial is not helpful. You may have difficulty accepting that loss is real. One becomes a great pretender, chooses to ignore the pain, but the pain still remains. You have to deal with it. Number 2, anger. Why does anger happen? Think what death does. Are any of you old enough to love change? If you're older, you're probably, how do you look at change? I don't want to change anything. I mean, you shave a certain way, you got your favorite pair of breeches, you get to certain things, and when you're older, you're comfortable with that. Because as you get older, how much in control of your life do you want to be? You want to be able to control your life. You want every circumstance, you want it to be controlled. Everything has its place. When you come in, I want this here, that. I want my kids to do this, call me on Thursday. You want order and control. Guess what happens when somebody dies or you lose something? You're no longer in control. What happens? Everything's all messed up, discombobulated, whatever the word wants to be. It's all tore up. And the result is pain and heartache and anger. Why? Think about this. If you no longer, how many people can remain cool and calm when they're not in control? When everybody else is controlling their decisions, what happens? Nobody likes that. And so it's just, that's what happens when you lose control, when you're no longer the master of your own ship. Things say, how about bargaining? What's involved in that is what's called the what ifs. I know somebody, she's a young nurse. She's still grieving over the fact that her dad developed cancer. And it was so advanced, by the time he got the first chemo treatment, he was gone. You know what she still blames herself over? I should have known. I'm a nurse. If only I'd done this. How long do you think the if only list lasts? If I do this, would that happen? You can't bring them back, but will I feel better? Will the pain all go away? That's not the way it works. Depression. How would you define depression? Intense sadness, no hope, an emptiness that can lead to withdrawal. Will this ever go away? I remember asking that going through grief. That's the way people are. We don't want that to last. It's horrible. The most painful thing we've ever gone through or continue to go through. We don't want it. Is there any hope at all? And then the last one finally is acceptance. When you finally get to the point where you can begin to see life, you come to grips with the reality of they're not going to be here anymore. You can't go back and change things. You've accepted that, and you finally start doing some things. That's where the church can come in and get helpful people, start doing the things that begin to rebuild a different life. That person's still there, a part of who you are. That person's still there, but your life and experience has now changed. The Lord wants you to go on, and we'll show you how. All right, we got about 10 or 15 minutes. Question time or comment time. Guys got the mics if you got a question. Now's the time. If you got or something that you want to share that you think have helped you, not just questions, but we're all in this together. I'm not the authority. There's some things that I've learned. I may not be able to answer every question, but we'll see what we can do. Yes.
Actually, do you feel that in your line of work there's a difference between people who have the opportunity to see something coming versus it abruptly happening? Like an abrupt death, it wasn't planned, versus a sickness that took time. Do you see a difference in how they grieve? Is it faster? Is it harder?
Sudden death is hard. I mean, if you start to measure the depth of things, the hardest, from what I've seen in my experiences, it's that sudden death that you're not prepared for. Because if you know, like my dad My mother died of a massive stroke. She'd had a stroke on Thursday, never regained consciousness, turned the plug off, unplugged everything on a Monday. She died a day later. What a horrible long night. My dad had Alzheimer's. Anybody know what that's like, caring for somebody with Alzheimer's? Along the way, he developed some kind of intestinal cancer. He weighed 225 pounds and went in the nursing home. He died weighing 115 pounds. I couldn't wait for him to die. I could hear him grinding his teeth in the hallway. He hurt so bad. We prayed for him to die. I asked the people there, how's he hanging on? And said, it might be helpful if the family gets together, because my dad, he was all about the family, and tell him it's okay. And so we gathered together, all the 5 of us in Knoxville, gathered on his bed and said, Dad, it's okay. You can go on now and be with Mama. It's okay now. He was dead within 24 hours. But I still remember the phone call from the nursing home. He's gone. I sit there. The reality, even though I've been praying for it for months. So I'm just saying, the deaths that make it harder, the sudden abrupt death, especially the younger, especially, here's one that's hard, suicide of your kids. That's tough. The hardest funeral I've ever done is funerals of teenagers who took their life. There's one man who was a member of Wooddale, had 2 sons, both took their lives by a shotgun blast to the brain. How do you deal with that? I can't imagine. You think it'd be hard? Yes. So I think, personally, if you know someone's going to die, they got terminal illness, what can you start doing? You can start preparing in the grieving process already and begin to deal with it. So you've already engaged at least partway through something that might be willing to help. It's those sudden ones, especially if there's trauma involved, especially if they're hurt. There's a kid, one of the saddest things, when I was a youth minister at South Haven for 4 years, had 120 kids. There's 2 kids that were my favorites. Their dad worked in a bank for a long time, and then he, about 50, said, I'm tired of working in a bank. He cashed in on a lot of his retirement and bought a dump truck and worked on highway paving crews in northern Mississippi. Loved it, made enough money to get by. On the way home one day, there's a construction guy driving a Caterpillar going the opposite road on Highway 51. The guy hit a bump, and the bulldozer came over and hit this guy's truck, James's truck, punctured the fuel tank and burnt him alive. He was burnt to a crisp. You think that funeral was hard? What did his son say? What do you think he kept saying? I couldn't even tell him goodbye. How long do you think it took for that family to get through that? So I'm just saying there, if let me caution you, don't start comparing the grief that you go through with somebody else. If you're hurting with grief, it hurts. It takes a long time to go through it. Don't get in the comparing business. Usually the more abrupt, and people, and I have preparation for it, sometimes people, if someone's older, you lose a mother at 92 as opposed to 22, that may be different. But I'm just saying, it's always going to be tough, always going to be hard. But sometimes what I've seen, when you see it coming, even though it's hard, especially is it helpful you got the support of the church to prepare you. Because what normally happens, if somebody says, we've done everything we can, you got about 3 more months, what happens to the visits of that man who's going to die? They don't make visits. Why not? What do you say?
I was going to ask, what is the worst thing you can say? What are the worst things you can say when you're helping someone through grief or you're showing up to the hospital? What are the top 2 or 3 things you don't say?
Don't ever say, I know what you're going through when you don't. Because if you do, that'll make you mad at anything. There are times I almost want to hit somebody. I mean, every death is different. Losing a child, that ranks high and so forth. But there are people who say, Bill, why are you not over this? You're a gospel preacher. You have all this faith. 6 months later, why aren't you over this? Why do you still talk about her? Are you crazy? They have no idea. But then guess what happens in due time for everybody? And see, another thing, when you're going to help somebody, the best thing you can do is shut up and listen. Let them talk to you about what they're hurting. Back when my wife died, blah, blah, did this. Even making hospital visits. The worst thing about a hospital visit? Here's a guy who had gallbladder surgery, and you go on and on about your gallbladder surgery, the old kind, the way they used to do it. He don't want to hear that. What does he want to hear? You're there to support him. You're there because you care. It's not about you. It's not about you. Go to listen. And see, that's the thing about going through grief. There may be times when you're ready to talk. And when they're not there, don't force it. Don't push it. Let it come naturally. In due time, you'll have that. But to be, and we'll talk about this later on, the third hour, you got to be close enough to let people trust you when the times come. So that one of the first things I'd say is, hey, don't do no harm. Keep your mouth shut. It's not about you. Understand what they're going through. Read scriptures. You don't know what else to say. Read Revelation 21 about heaven. Whatever. Just if they're willing to talk, let them talk.
You ever hear people say, God must have something better for him, or God must, we start trying to put God's will into this. And we got to be real careful with saying, God took your loved one. God did this. God can work through good things.
It takes a while in the grieving process where you can start understanding concepts. Because it's like, a lot of times, here's the question, why did this happen, God? Why did this happen? Like Job, what was his question? Why did this happen to me? Did he ever get an answer? If we even got the answers, like my wife died. Why'd you let her die? She's 52 years of age. That's the height of my preaching career. I had two girls at home at 16 to 21, 20-year-old. I got to raise her myself. I don't know what about being a mama. Why'd you let her die? She was good. Always took care of herself. Why? You think the answer would have helped me? You think it would have taken away the grief? No. Wouldn't have done a thing. And God knows that. And so I would leave the theology away for down the road after they've had a chance to that's what the last lesson will be about, understanding the big picture. But going through the grief, the pain, that does not take it away at all. Because when you hear God's got a reason for it, that's not what you want to hear. I miss her. She's not here to help me with my kids. I got a kid crying. What do I tell her? So see, that doesn't help knowing that. That can actually make you more mad at God. So I'm just saying, you got to know what you're doing, know what you're saying. So I would save the theology for later when they're more able to handle that. Great question. Great comment. But almost time to take a break. I know you need a break. The mind can only absorb what the seat can endure. I've heard that a long time ago. So, any other questions? Does he preach long? Okay.
What do you say positive to this person when their 25-year-old son died and you walk in his office? What do you say to him?
Anybody got any suggestions? I love you. I love you. Because when the loss occurs of somebody you love, do you have anybody left? Yes. You're not focusing on them. That's the most important thing you can say. So here's what I can't imagine what you're going through. Well, I'm going to pray for you. I pray. And just, I just offer. Sometimes it can be helpful, especially in the early stages, when your mind's all crazy. And here's a mother. She's still got kids to care for. You think she remembers the baby food? You think she remembers everything she needs to get at Kroger's? Do the things she's forgetting to do. Take care of what I call the physical things that help, the running here and running there. Do that first so she can focus on the other. I'm just saying, do the physical stuff. Help take care of her body, her mind, the kids, whatever has to be done. Is the insurance paid? You have this done, because they don't think about that. Life's all a mess. You ignore things and miss things. But eventually, we're here for you. We love you. Whatever we can do, we're here to do. That's all you can basically say early on, because they have to deal with it. It's hard, because if you don't deal with it, how long will that last? If a doctor had dirty hands and dirty instruments and sewed you up with those germs still in there, what's going to happen? Is it going to go away? Going to fix itself on its own? See, that's what, if you don't deal with it, that's there. It has to be dealt with. It has to be, you have to understand, she's never going to come back. Can I imagine life without her, him, the 25-year-old son? I'm just saying that's a hard reality to deal with, or divorce, or all those kind of things. A loss of career, all of it's hard. You just have to face it head on, and talk about it, and do other things when you're ready.
I was just going to ask, is everybody okay with room temperature? Is anybody cold or hot or anything?
One or two more questions? It's almost 10:30. I think it's supposed to be how many sessions? 45 minutes or an hour? One more question. Anybody else? Okay.
The stages of grief, do you see them? Because often, with the stages of grief, often they can be fluid, right? Like instead of just, oh, I'm done here, I'm gonna go to here, I'm gonna go to here, but then all of a sudden you're way back up here to anger all over again, and then you're denying it again, and then you're bargaining again.
It is not a linear progression. That's not the way, oh, now I'm in this state. That's not the way it works. And some people may have, I'm not saying everybody has to go through all those stages. Everybody's different. How you handle things, how you see things. It's helpful to know what the stages that are there, but there's no timetable for that. The denial phase, that should last 6 months. That's not the way that it works. How healthy you approach grief, the thing that can help speed up the process. But as we'll see, I'll give you a heads up. Anybody know about how long, if you were to look at the American Psychological Association, how long they say it takes for most people to begin to think about acceptance and moving on? What's that? 2 years. Anywhere from 6 months to 2 years. What would the 6 months be? Maybe it's the loss of your ex-husband who's been gone for 32 years. Well, I'm sorry. I get over that. I'm just saying it depends on what's going on. So even if and here's the crazy thing, at 18 months, a trigger can happen and it feels just the same as it did 6 weeks later. But what happens every day is a bad day for a while, then occasionally you have a good day. You're happy and joyful. Then you have bad days, and then like with somebody who's got dementia, you don't lose your mind all at once. You have bad days and good days. As time goes on, you begin to have occasional good days. Then they'll be more frequent. And after a while, you'll have more good days than bad days. And then, I don't care how, you ever get over grief? No, you don't. You're still the same person, but it's left a hole, an opening, a void there that no one else can ever fill. That's who you are. That's your identity. And we'll talk about that here in a few minutes, why that makes so hard about going on. But anyway, great questions. I hope this has been helpful to you. Somebody else you got?
When somebody dies, your loved one dies, and all these people come, but then later, say a month, not even a month, they all go away, and nobody's there to help or even say something to that person.
Again, what's the problem? People are so afraid of doing something wrong, they don't go at all. Just being there. Anybody know who Bill Morrison is? I know Kelly does. Here's a guy who had a 23-year-old daughter. And she grew up with birth defects. She would never be able to socially marry and all that kind of stuff. She got through school and all that. At the age of 23, she died of a massive heart failure. How do you deal with it? But what happened, there were 2 or 3 families that came over. One family just came and said, they didn't really say much of anything. Luke showed up, and him and his wife was able to help some. But I've been studying with him every week. I started studying with him 15 years ago when his dad died. And then 4 or 5 years ago, his mother died and all that. So we've been studying the Bible for years, but still yet, his daughter died October 17th. The other day I called, it's right in the middle of a crying spell. It's been a whole year. Here's the question he asked, how long will this last, Bill? Because see, that's the way grief does. But what we need to do, what today's purpose is to do what, folks? Educate each other as to how to show up and what to do when you get there. That's what this is. I commend you. I mean, I can't tell you how proud I am for you to do. We don't have as many people, but anybody here outside of Norm from a different congregation? If this congregation learned this and was able to better respond to people who've lost loved ones and all that, how much better would this congregation be? Know how to meet needs. Now think about this in the big term, as far as evangelism. If you take a congregation that says, one thing we're going to do well, we're going to learn how to take care and respond to people who are hurting, who've experienced loss. We're going to become, as much as we can, experts about that. And no other congregation is doing that. Pretty much what you see happens every place. Very few people show up. What do you think the Lord thinks about all that? There's somebody getting ready to move to Knoxville from Nashville from Texas. They're older. Going to move to the Knoxville area. He knows death's coming in 2 years. You think providentially he'll make the connection to this congregation that can take care of his people? I believe the answer is yes. Why would he do that? Well, if you had a child, in another city going through struggles, would you not want a Christian to show up? If you got a child, would you not want them to be fixed with a strong congregation? Don't you think God wants that? If this congregation really learns it and gets on board and becomes as much as you can, intelligent and caring and compassion, you have this skill now to show up and help people. God knows that. And guess what's going to happen? There'll be people providentially that you'll cross paths with that you can help. That's the way this whole world is designed. When you're hurting, God can't come in the flesh. He sends who? People. Who are they? The ones that know what's going on. And that needs to be you. So I'm sad, for your sake, for anybody else. Anybody know Phil Adams? He's the guy who preached at Alt Road for a while when his wife died abruptly. Well, she had all kinds of issues, but, I went to see him as regular as I could. I hadn't had him, I'd gone through a little bit. I lost my mom by that time. I left one time about 6 months out. I thought he'll take his life before the week's out. He was bad shape. But before the year was out, one Sunday morning, he said, "What are you going to be doing the latter part of the week, Bill?" I said, "I don't know what's going on." "I may want you to do a marriage ceremony." I said, "What? For who?" He said, "Me." I said, "What are you talking about, Phil?" "I met this girl online. She's in South Carolina. I'm going to go see her. I've seen her once before in person, but if it works out, I'm going to bring her back and marry her." And he did. One of the best marriages I've ever seen. He's great. Who worked that out? God did. He did what he could, but I wasn't there for him as knowledgeable as I am now. I do a better job now. But that's what the church needs to be there for. It needs to be beyond the leadership. It needs to be. When regular members do that, what's the impact on the church? When regular members show up and say the things that only preachers usually say, when they show up, provide the loving and support and compassion, what does that do for someone's understanding of the situation? What does it show? Now, I do it because, he's paid to do that. How much you get paid? Well, we pay him to do that. But when a member does it, and they say the right things, what do you think? Why would he do that? Because he lives it. He knows it. He knows he can help you and wants to help you. See, the thing about, and we'll talk about this more in the fourth hour, the fourth lesson, when people show up and do God's work and support each other going through those hard times, what's different about that congregation as opposed to one that's just a worshiping society? They don't care, no visitation at all. When you got a congregation visiting, got their hands dirty in the lives of other people, what do they see on a regular basis that the worshiping society church doesn't see? You know what they see? The works of God moving. God answering prayers of people. Lord, help me. Who's going to answer the call? Who does he send? That's what the church is designed to be. That's what the church is designed to do. When you show up to do it, I'm not saying Jesse and the elders here and all that can be, but when you show up to do it, that puts it on a different level. That church has got it figured out. They're doing it because they're volunteers doing it. And when people see churches like that, we got regular members who know the Bible, who live the Bible, who share the Bible, who show up when you're hurting. Why would someone not want to be a part of that? Because it shows you what you can be. That's my answer to that. Let's take a break. 15 minutes, then we'll come back.